Churchill. Aristotle. Socrates. Onassis, named after two Greek. From being totally broke at age 21 to being a millionaire at age 23. His father's first name was Socrates. Aristotle was an Illuminati king, a shipping tycoon, an intelligent, ruthless, hard-driving man, a man of the world who spoke a number of languages such as French, Spanish, English, Italian, and Turkish. He married JFK's widow. His ever-present sunglasses made him look like Al Capone to a number of people. Jackie Bouvier Kennedy Onassis. Her father was a member of the Society of the Cincinnati, the American equivalent to the Order of the Garter. Her father, Black Jack, was corrupt, what is known as a womanizer. He worked at making a living from the stock market. Jackie's stepfather was the Auchincloss family, an elite family. Her stepfather's second wife before Jackie's mother was Senator Thomas Gore's daughter. Her stepfather was in naval intelligence. Jackie went to the schools that the children of the elite go to. On the anniversary of JFK's assassination, Orville and Jane Freeman were the only ones to remember the date to say or do something about it. Jackie went that day to Central Park and had a good cry. Stavros Niarchos, Aristotle's brother-in-law, and Ari's business competition. Stavros' parents came from Sparta, Greece. His relatives were rich. Stavros went into shipping and after WW II broke out, left Greece to avoid having to fight for Greece. He was a close friend of Colgate, Roosevelt and Bernard Baruch, who he would invite to his house on Long Island. He rented his Long Island house from Harry Hopkins, who was the man who told Pres. F.D. Roosevelt what to do. Even though he was a millionaire, he had a difficult time avoiding have to serve. Eventually, he managed to get himself situated as a naval officer in intelligence for Greece in Alexandria, Egypt. Information sent into the 69 to 70 Who's Who reference book about his wartime exploits are fictitious. Niarchos and Aristotle were friends from 1934 onward, but also at times enemies trying to outdo each other. Both frequently went to St. Moritz, Swit, a ski resort. Stavros also frequents an old Medici family palace estate near Turin where the Duke of Edinburgh and Baron Elie de Rothschild like to go and shoot birds. The estate has many and it isn't unusual for them to kill 1,000 a day. Stavros is an important leader of the Bilderbergers and a billionaire. He married Henry Ford II's daughter who was 38 years younger than he was, and divorced her shortly afterwards. He worked closely with David Rockefeller. Is the Onassis bloodline still powerful? Aristotle Onassis died in 1975. His son and heir to his throne died in 1973. My inside information about the Onassis family being one of the top 13 goes back to the 1960s and 70s. Is the family still powerful? One big clue that they still wield power within the Illuminati is that Stavros Niarchos, Aristotle's brother-in-law, is a powerful Bilderberger. The executive committee of the Bilderbergers are the equivalent to 9 degrees of the branch Illuminati. Is the Onassis family still one of the top 13 satanic bloodlines? I do not know. The answer lies in doing genealogical work to find out what the core satanic bloodline is that curses through the Onassis family. One whistleblower on the Illuminati was Dennis Brunel, a Grand Master of an OTO lodge, who became disillusioned with the OTO's Illuminati program. Some of his information touches on the Onassis family. My understanding of the Onassis family is limited in terms of their satanic activities with the Illuminati, but I will attempt to give my readers a better understanding. My inside knowledge of the occult side, that is the secret satanic ritual activities of the family, is sparse, because my informants have very limited knowledge of the Onassis participation. However, there are certainly plenty of tracks in the sand which indicate who the business friends of this family have been, and they have been very clearly those within the Illuminati or with connections to it. Turkey. The area that is now known as Turkey played a major role in the mystery religions. The use of drugs to create religious experiences was developed to a fine art by various occult fraternal mystery religion groups in the Turkey area. The assassins, from where we get the word hashish, controlled parts of Turkey and Lebanon in medieval times. They used drugs to gain the allegiance of their recruits. Some of the most powerful figures for the Illuminati have been Turks. The Grand Orient has had some powerful figures in Turkey. For instance, at the Masonic Congress of all the Grand Orients, that's European Freemasonry. Although several American presidents have been members of European Freemasonry Grand Lodges, Bo Ahmed came from Turkey. The Grand Lodge of Asia was represented by Sebike Kadir from Asia. Bo Ahmed took a big role in the Grand Orient's decisions. As an aside, let me explain one example of the power of the Grand Orient in America. The Grand Orient was originally strong in Louisiana but spread itself to many other U.S. locations. Garfield, a very powerful man in the Grand Orient, managed to become U.S. president because the political process got deadlocked at the convention and the Masons suggested him as a compromise candidate. Although Garfield was an extremely powerful Mason, had been perhaps the youngest general in the U.S. Army during the Civil War, the Illuminati ordered him shot after he had served about a year in office as president. Garfield was reported by an eyewitness to satanic rituals to have participated in the cannibalistic rites of Satanism done to gain the spiritual power of the eaten person. The Grand Orient Freemasonry has been linked to other orders of Freemasonry that are also called Rosicrucians. Pope John XXIII joined a Rosicrucian group that had links to European Freemasonry when he was in Turkey. While the secret Grand Orient Freemasonry was very strong in Turkey in spite of its small numbers, the regular American Freemasonry granted a dispensation for a Masonic lodge to operate in Smyrna, Turkey in May, 1863, but the charters were withdrawn on August 27, 1880. However, it is interesting that of all the Turkish cities, Smyrna was definitely the best place for Freemasonry to gain recruits. Men like Ahmed Pasha and many of the other Pasha family have been leaders within Freemasonry and the Illuminati. Ahmed Pasha was a Satanist and had a large harem. Mehmet Talat Pasha, 1872–1921, was a Freemason and part of the Turkish Revolution of 1908. He was the leader of the Young Turks, which was a joint project of the Sufis and the Frankist Satanists. The type of Satanism led by the Frank family has had connections to Turkey for hundreds of years. Mehmet Talat Pasha was the Grand Master of the Grand Orient of Turkey. He was held the political position in Turkey of Grand Vizier of Turkey, 1917–18. Another Turkish Pasha was part of the Turkish royalty running Egypt when Egypt was part of the Ottoman Empire. His name was Khedive Ismail Pasha and he was Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Egypt. It was this Turk, Khedive Ismail Pasha, who gave the famous obelisk to the United States. This obelisk was called Cleopatra's Needle and was originally erected in the City of the Sun, Heliopolis, about 1500 BC. The obelisk is a representation of a human penis, because sun worship, worship of regeneration, sex, and worship of the sun god Satan were all tied together. Masons helped with the moving of the obelisk, and its dedication when it arrived in New York City. Large obelisks have been erected by Masons in New York, Washington, D.C., Paris, the Vatican, and London. If my memory serves me correct, Berlin received one too at one time. Every morning when the United States President wakes up, he can look out the window and see the Masonic obelisk and be reminded of who controls America. If the President has any training in the mystery religion of ancient Egypt, he will also know what body part is symbolically erected in the Washington Memorial. If the United States were ever to return to serving God, that monument would be a good one to destroy. God asked the Israelites not just simply to avoid worshipping such abominations, he asked his people to destroy them, for their very creation was abomination. This touches on the issues raised in another article in this newsletter. The Illuminati of Europe via the bridge. East India Company wrested control from the great moguls of the opium trade during the 18th and 19th century. People connected the bridge. East India Company were responsible for the creation of the Fabian Society. The Illuminati, already headquartered in London in the 19th century, allowed John Jacob Astor, see January 1, 93 newsletter about the Astor family, beginning around 1815 to operate an opium smuggling operation. Besides Astor's ships picking up quicksilver and lead at Gibraltar, and iron, steel from northern Europe, his ships picked up opium at Smyrna, Turkey. The opium was then sold in China. The Onassis family was one of the top 3 merchant families in Smyrna. And Socrates Onassis until 1922 quietly ran a banking operation, or money laundering, from their home which had a large amount of money left by powerful Turks. Could Socrates' father been part of a secret Illuminati opium connection, which had begun back about 1815 with the Astor family in Smyrna, Turkey? We know for certain that he had powerful British, Italian, and Turkish friends before he was arrested in 1922, and that these friends saved his life from a death sentence. About 1925–26, his son Aristotle Onassis, who was from Smyrna, Turkey, began secretly importing opium into Argentina from Turkey, under the cover and disguise of importing tobacco. The Grand Orient of Italy by the Jewish Freemason Emanuele Caris established 2 secret lodges at Salonika, Turkey around the early 20th century. The dialect of the Jews in that area is often mistakenly called crude Spanish. Actually, the language is Latino, a Judeo-Spanish dialect spoken in Constantinople and Smyrna. A Western Ladino is spoken in Salonika, Bosnia, and Serbia. Masonic Jews speaking this Latino language were part of the Masonic plot that started World War I. Numerous high-level Masons were informed of the coming assassination of the Archduke, which a thinking person could realize what in contradiction. Actually, I would state it slightly different. His life is shrouded in smokescreens. However, there are records, documents, witnesses, etc. And it is possible to reconstruct many details about his life. I will attempt to reconstruct some of the details of that life as they pertain to his secret life as an Illuminati leader. The Illuminati is divided into the drug, porn section, the political, business management section, and the cult ritual section, global communication section, and mind control section. The leadership within the various areas overlap. The drug, porn, political areas work together as a unit. The mind control area seems to be somewhat technical and somewhat separate. Further, several groups have been identified as assigned the job of keeping the long-range plans. The three groups that have been entrusted with long-range plans are the Order of the Garter, Order of the Quest, and Keepers of the Dawn. The plans to bring in the New World Order are very detailed, and their management and safekeeping have not been haphazard. Aristotle worked within the drug, porn, political, business management area. Aristotle's power was so pervasive that some researchers of his activities concluded that he was absolutely the most powerful man on earth. This is because they were not aware of the shared power of the Illuminati kings. Aristotle did have worldwide power, but that appearance of power was there because he was part of Maria, the satanic hierarchy which controls the world. Aristotle Onassis family has bad their misfortunes too. All of the top families are in competition, and although they work together they also fight together. Even within Aristotle's own family, a stiff long-time rivalry with his brother-in-law made life difficult for everyone associated with Aristotle. And yet for all their competition, Aristotle invited Stavros Niarchos to spend time on his yacht, which Jacqueline his wife detested immensely. Asterisk. Correction. Greek is spoken in Salonika, not Ladino. Salonika is a Greek city, editor's note. Aristotle leaves Greece and goes to Argentina. Aristotle's father had planned to send him to Oxford, but the Turkish genocide of the Greek Turks changed his plans. Aristotle instead set out from Greece to Argentina. Supposedly, Aristotle landed in Argentina stateless and broke. From what I can make out it appears to be true, although it is possible he had some contacts to help them move to a foreign country. It is said that he finally found a job as a dishwasher in a bar on the corner of Corrientes and Talcahuano in Buenos Aires. Near the end of 1924, he was able to obtain a job later on with the British United River Plate Telephone Co. Argentina was at times called the Fifth British Dominion because the British Rothschilds and other British investors owned so much of Argentina. In the next few years, Aristotle proved himself a very capable manager and with great potential as an underworld leader. Juan Goana, the boss of a leading Argentine cigarette manufacturing company, was the first to put in an order through Aristotle to get tobacco from Turkey via Ari's father in Greece. This tobacco importing was the cover for Adi's opium running. After 2 years, Onassis went into manufacturing cigarettes. Again this was a cover, but Onassis was out to prove himself in any way he could, so he illegally borrowed the name of a famous Argentine brand of cigarettes called Bis, and labeled his cigarettes the same thing. The owner of Bis sued Onassis for using his company's name and won in court. The cigarette manufacturing was clearly a losing deal, and Onassis got out of it. However, the biographies credit his cigarette manufacturing as bringing in his wealth, while at the same time acknowledging that he was losing money from them and had to dump them because they were unprofitable. Which is it? As I stated, Aristotle was running drugs into Argentina. Aristotle states that he was penniless when he arrived in Argentina at age 21, and that he had made his first $1 million by age 23. Long story short, the facts as to where he lived, what witnesses say etc. appear to collaborate that he went from having nothing to being wealthy within those 2 years. His lifestyle changed dramatically. People blame his riches on the fact that he worked long hours. I know many people who work long hours and are creative, and people just don't move up the ladder that fast by working for a phone company and selling tobacco. Aristotle's friends. Aristotle Onassis associated with many powerful people. The fact that he rubbed shoulders with establishment figures that tie back to the elite is nothing surprising of a person his wealth. However, it is the nature of his involvement with other Illuminati figures that reveals his position within Maria. Before going into his Illuminati business ventures, let's just discuss some of his friendships. An example of his visits to friends is this quote from the book Onassis. The Christina's cruises always produced items which no alert gossip columnist could miss. Onassis dropping in on Prince Alfonso Hojaya's Marbella Club in southern Spain and lunching with Baron and Baroness Guy de Rothschild, amidst rumors that it was Rothschild money that had supplanted his own in Monte Carlo, was obviously a noteworthy social incident. Onassis, page 255, During WW2, Onassis was a regular guest of the movie Mogul Spiros Skoras at Mamaroneck on Long Island. Other close friends of Onassis were the Perons of Argentina. The Perons set up a dictatorship in Argentina. The Perons have a great number of Nazi and satanic connections, activities. If you get into studying about the Perons, you will come up with names such as Joseph Mengele, a satanic Nazi doctor, Dr. Fritz Thyssen, and Otto Skorzeny. Onassis had sexual liaisons with Evita Peron, who was a platinum blonde. Onassis had Nazi connections that continued his whole life, as did the Perons. For instance, one of Onassis's Nazi associates was Hjalmar Schacht, president of Hitler's Reichsbank, who Onassis hired after the war. Schacht helped Onassis shipyards in Germany build tankers after WW2. Until people realize that the real guiding hand behind the Nazis was Satanism, they will continue to be misguided as to the way everything connects together at the top. For instance, John Foster Dulles was the man at Versailles Treaty who can be credited for having created the treaty's harsh terms against Germany that ruined Germany financially after WW2. And yet this same man, John Foster Dulles, was the person who secretly went to Hitler to confirm to Hitler that the elite would financially back Hitler's rise to power. If Hitler were anything like our image of him, Hitler would have wrung his neck. Here before him was the man who made Germany suffer. Why was Hitler friendly with this man? It makes no sense, unless people wake up to what is going on. The answer is that there is a conspiracy of those who are at the top to rule us, and to guide us toward a new world order, and they are quite willing to sacrifice whole nations to do that. Onassis was an extremely close friend of Winston Churchill. The Freemason Winston Churchill is a descendant of a family that has been part of the elite that have secretly run the world. Winston Churchill on several occasions told Onassis that the only one he could trust in WW2 was Joseph Stalin. This is a far cry from the picture given in history books. Winston Churchill spent a great deal of time on Onassis's yacht Christina. Onassis was also friendly with Winston Churchill's friend of Bernard Baruch. It was Bernard Baruch who convinced Winston Churchill to join the Illuminati conspiracy. He asked Churchill to come watch something important in NY in 1929, and then he showed Churchill how they could destroy the stock market. That show of power brought Churchill on board. Two other Illuminati friends of Ari Onassis were Joseph Kennedy and Peter Grace. Both men also belonged to top 13 Illuminati bloodlines. Johnny Agnelli, a powerful man in the Illuminati, spent time on a number of occasions on Onassis's yacht Christina while it was in the Riviera. Years before JFK became president, Onassis had JFK and Winston Churchill on his yacht at the same time. In 1928, the Illuminati men who controlled the major oil companies got together at Achnacarry Castle and formally created the Achnacarry Agreement, which divided up the world into an international cartel. This is why you may have watched the same gas truck bring gas to all the different gas stations in an area, for instance, say a Sinclair station, a BP station, Rothschild's, and an Exxon station, Rockefeller. If the reader understands the world's oil was totally in an Illuminati monopoly by 1928, it will help you understand that Aristotle, who was the man who built the largest oil tanker ships, was also Illuminati. In 1 year alone during the 1950s, Onassis bought 17 new tankers. Evidence of the conspiracy. One of the most telling paper trail signs that the conspiracy has left behind was an executive order that FDR signed just after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. This executive order was a semi-secret amendment to Trading with the Enemy Act, which made it legal to trade with the enemy if the Sec. of the Treasury, then Hans Morgenthau, gave permission. Morgenthau was a tool of the conspiracy, and of course he gave permission to the top Illuminati to trade with the enemy. In 1983, a book came out, Trading with the Enemy, which exposes how the elite secretly kept Hitler going by supplying him, rebuilding his communications, etc. Onassis, as an Illuminati king, worked with other elites, Rockefeller, Kennedy, Getty, to quietly make a profit and keep the war going longer. Onassis sold oil and guns to both sides. ITT telephones were used in German submarines. This executive order shows that at the top there is a conspiracy. It is reproduced on the following pages. There were 450 merchant ships owned by Greeks before WW2. Out of those, Aristotle said 410 were sunk during the war. The official count was 360. Either way, it is clear that most of the Greek shippers lost their large merchant ships. However, the German submarines and aircraft never once touched Aristotle's ships, although they sailed through war zones. Neither did the Allies. Aristotle alone did not suffer any losses. Aristotle's large fleet did not lose a single ship, even the ones that were in Scandinavia when the Germans invaded. Only the full collaboration at the highest levels could have pulled that one off. Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was a self-made millionaire and genius. Howard Hughes was not part of the system, so he was fair game to destroy. Even millionaires like Hughes and the Hunt brothers have to toe the line, or they can be taken out by the Illuminati. This doesn't mean Howard Hughes was virtuous. Howard Hughes gave Nixon's brother Donald a $250,000 loan gift in 1956 in order to continue having Vice Pres. Nixon in his pocket. Hughes had been a supporter of Nixon for many years. Onassis infiltrated his own men into Hughes' organization. Chester Davis was from Sicily, and although he worked for Hughes, took orders from Onassis. In 1955, Hughes had obtained two doubles, one named L. Wayne Rector and the other Brooks Randy. In March 1957, Onassis men at the Beverly Hills Hotel captured Howard Hughes using Hughes' own disloyal men. Hughes was seriously hurt in the kidnapping. I believe at this point he was taken to Emerald Isle Hotel in the Bahamas. Some of the people who are aware that Onassis captured Hughes dispute that Hughes was taken out of the country. The top floor was rented for the Hughes party. For a month the captive Hughes was shot full of heroin, and then secretly transported to a cell on Onassis' private island of Scorpios. Hughes' two doubles stayed on under the pay of Onassis. One became Hughes, and the other became Hughes' double. Computer programs which can duplicate signatures were used to provide Hughes' signature. The computer and its program used for duplicating Hughes' signature even became public knowledge when the Los Angeles Times had an article on January 28, 1971 about a computer which had been programmed to write the signature of Hughes. The Mormon Mafia that supposedly guarded Hughes actually ran the Hughes Empire for Illuminatus Onassis, which accounts for the change in policies that were made by Hughes' empire. It also explains why they bought up every newsreel they could find on Hughes in order to duplicate voice prints using computers. When they were through with the double L. Wayne Rector, he was shot at Rothschild's Inn on the Park, in London. In a meeting with fellow Satanist Joseph Kennedy in September 1957, the decision was taken to use the Mafia's power to get John F. Kennedy elected. The Mafia was caught in Chicago tampering big time with the voting, but Nixon was denied a recount of the votes. Nixon backed off from making a fuss because he was promised the chance to be president later. Illinois Republicans made an unofficial recount of 699 paper ballot precincts in Cook County and came up with the vote in favor of Nixon. Those votes would have changed Illinois' electoral votes and thrown the victory to Nixon. However, Sam Giancana and his henchman Mayor Richard Daley were not about to let an official recount take place. In 1961, Joseph Kennedy had a stroke, and John Kennedy and Robert, feeling their freedom, and disliking some of the powerful Illuminati like Aristotle Onassis, decided to use their popularity to destroy the conspiracy. I believe Kennedy and Robert had more courage to take on the conspiracy, due to the fact that they were familiar with it from having been, in a sense, on the inside of it during their days growing up. However, neither son had received the Illuminati training and indoctrination that their older brother had, and Wenby died. Joseph made a mistake when he decided to replace Joe Jr. with John, who they called Jack. The mistake was that John F. Kennedy may have seemed like he'd be a good Illuminati president, but he actually thought for himself. He thought for himself because he was young, and with that impetuousness and vigor of youth, and with the popularity he had the possibility to do some good for this nation. If I were state my evaluation, it would be to tell conservatives that they have been hoodwinked. John F. Kennedy did more conservative, preserving this nation, things in his presidency than Nixon and Reagan, who were heralded as conservative. Kennedy didn't recognize Red China, no, that was Nixon. Kennedy didn't triple the national debt, no, that was Reagan. The CIA has been out to get JFK, ever since they realized JFK didn't view himself as their puppet, but that he viewed himself as their boss. The head of the CIA on purpose ruined the CIA's chances to succeed at the Bay of Pigs. He personally prevented the CIA air cover from taking off, which the CIA knew that without air support, the operation had no chance, which was soon proved correct. In everyone's zeal to get JFK, they blamed JFK. It all sounded so believable, because the CIA were going to tell the full story. The public is not astute enough to realize that the press had subtly turned against Kennedy. Two powerful friends who liked John F. Kennedy and wanted to help JFK fight the elite were taken out before Kennedy was assassinated. Senator Estes Kefauver, whose crime commission had discovered the 1932 deal that Onassis, Kennedy, Meyer, Roosevelt, Lansky and other Illuminati, mafia figures had made. Kefauver was poisoned so that he had a secret poison-induced heart attack on August 8, 1963. One suspect that might have done it was his subordinate Bernard Fensterwald, who was also a CIA assassin. The other was Philip Graham. His wife Catherine Meyer Graham has been a full participant of the conspiracy and shows up repeatedly in elite activities. Catherine bribed some psychiatrists to certify her husband, who was editor of the Washington Post, was insane. He was ordered by a judge into a mental hospital. When he was allowed to visit home on a weekend, he was found suicided by a shotgun. Bobby Kennedy had a good idea who shot his brother. He wrote an unpublished book called The Enemy Within, and then later he was assassinated too. Actually, the whole establishment were out to get Kennedy, and even George Bush was involved with the assassination. The key to understanding the Illuminati is that it is headquartered in the London area. The Satanists and witches refer to Great Britain as the mother country. Onassis had the best connections anyone could want in the British government, as would be expected of someone of his standing in the Illuminati. He had many British friends. Just one example is Sir Lionel Heald, the Bridge Attorney General. He attended the exclusive Bridge Other Club. When WW2 broke out on September 3, 39, Onassis was living in Savoy Hotel, where the headquarters for the Illuminati's Pilgrim Society are. The British London Times backed Onassis in his dispute with Peru over whaling. Onassis did finally get himself into trouble with illegal whaling when the nation of Norway gathered the evidence of his culling of hundreds of whales that were illegal to hunt. Just two more quick examples of his social connections in Britain are his attendance at J. Paul Getty's party at Sutton Place, Eng. In the 50s, and Onassis' own big party for the elite on the 17th of June, 58 at Dorchester, England. As explained in Be Wise as Serpents, Britain's overseas intelligence MI6 is the Illuminati's chief intelligence agency. There is no way of knowing how many meetings took place dealing with the planning of the assassination of Kennedy. The first were high-level Illuminati meetings. But the Illuminati meetings were not operational-level meetings. There were several levels of meetings. Next, a series of meetings by British intelligence at Trial Compound at Montego Bay, Jamaica, and mafia meetings at who knows where. A minor trading company called Permindex was the cover to an assassination bureau that had its major U.S. subsidiary, the International Trade Mart in New Orleans. The FBI's Division 5 was tied in with Permindex, and Permindex's board of directors had UN posts, mafia positions, European banking ties, Nazi ties, etc. In other words, Permindex was well connected. By the time the planning was done, it included certain elements of the CIA and Freemasons. A Major Louise Mortimer Bloomfield, Permindex's pres. and chairman, a key player in Hoover's Division 5, and a member of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Protestant branch of the Knights of Malta, was a homosexual lover of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. All the board of Permindex and many of its various subsidiaries were in various areas in November 1963 carrying out the assassination and cover-up. One of the covers for the Permindex operators' teams was to pose as missionaries of the American Council of Christian Churches, ACCC. The whole reason the elite set up the extensive ACCC was to have a cover for their killing units. For instance, a group of about 30 of the best marksmen were undercover as part of ACCC Missionary School in Puebla, Mexico. The Tolstoy Foundation, who I have visited with, were another pseudo-Christian front. Later, the headquarters of this assassination group was shifted to Paradise Island, Grand Bahamas to Intertel. Ian Fleming's novels write about a third force used to create a world government that was based in the resort islands of the Caribbean. How true that has become. In the westerns put out by Hollywood, when the bad guy does something to the good guy, he runs off with his woman. That is what happened with JFK. Onassis was one of the Illuminati kings who decided JFK must go, and he got to run off with the dead man's wife. Onassis had already gotten Jackie onto his yacht, sexually, prior to Kennedy's assassination. Franklin Roosevelt Jr. was on board together with Aristotle and Jackie. Jackie didn't enjoy her marriage to Onassis. At one point in their marriage, when they were swimming nude at Onassis Island Scorpios, 10 photographers with underwater cameras and telephoto lens captured Jackie naked and her picture was splashed across Playman and Hustler, etc. Jackie was furious and wanted her husband to sue the newspapers and magazines, which he refused to do. A year before Aristotle died, he actually admitted that he had planned the whole operation. The date given for the actual Howard Hughes death, who had been kept prisoner under horrendous conditions by Onassis, was April 18, 1971. In the previous year 1970, Hughes' purported autobiography had come out written by Clifford Irving. Clifford Irving's wife took the publisher's check made out to Howard Hughes to one of Onassis's Swiss banks, and was paid. Family difficulties. Onassis' second wife was Tina, Athena Mary Onassis. When she divorced her husband for committing adultery, said, "It is almost 13 years since Mr. Onassis and I were married in New York City. Since then he has become one of the world's richest men, but his wealth has not brought me happiness with him, nor, as the world knows, has it brought him happiness with me. Tina divorced Ari and then went on to soon marry a relative of Winston Churchill, the Marquis of Blandford. Later, she divorced him and married her old brother-in-law Stavros Niarchos in May, 1971. But after he killed her sister she quit him too. Eugenia killed. Eugenic, the sister-in-law of 8Onassis, died according to the official version of an overdose of sleeping pills. Her body in the postmortem was covered with bruises, black left eye, swelling on the left temple, a hemorrhage to the left of the larynx and so forth down the rest of her body. Let's not swallow the Illuminati's propaganda to lull us into sleep about what they have done. It might also be important to comment on the background of the Uvanos family. Both Stavros Niarchos and Aristotle Onassis married Uvanos girls. The Uvanos family was a prominent family on the Turkish island of Chios. The island of Chios had a type of tree, mastic trees, that produced an early form of chewing gum. From the word mastic is where we get the word masticate. Chios was the private property of the Sultan and it was where he kept his harem. The island was given special royal treatment and allowed to have it full of chewing gum, and booze and broads. The Uvanos family was one of the leading families on this island. Basic sources on Onassis family. Interviews with people, and notes from other researchers. Author's own research. Genealogy compiled from research notes of this writer Fritz Springmeier. Frischauer, Willie. Onassis. N.Y. Meredith Press, 1968. Heyman, C. David. A Woman Named Jackie. N.Y. Carol Commune. 1989. Lily, Doris. Those Fabulous Greeks. Onassis, Niarchos, and Livanos. N.Y. Cowles Book Company, 1970.
William W. Corcoran. Other Reynolds, Duke Companies. Terry Sanford. Review about Reynolds Companies, some Reynolds of note. An examination of one of the leading Illuminati families. Part of my research on the family has been packed away and I hope to recover some more of it for another article. The Reynolds are a very elite Illuminati family. The Reynolds family is not one of the 13 primary bloodlines, but they are such a prominent Illuminati family within the 13 bloodlines that I have decided to single them out for another article on Illuminati bloodlines. Although the Reynolds are allied with many of the major satanic bloodlines, including the Rothschilds, the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, the Graces and the Greys, they are especially close and intertwined to the Duke and Coleman families. One example of a Duke-Reynolds joint project is the Research Triangle Foundation. It should be remembered that the temporary National Economic Committee of Congress in 1937, which studied the super-rich, found that the Dukes and the Reynolds were among the top 13 wealthiest families in America. Further, my research at one place or another has shown that the Reynolds of the Illuminati variety have interacted with all of the other major satanic bloodlines. These elite birds of a feather all flock together. My newsletter has repeatedly exposed members of this family. During the course of putting out this newsletter in 92-95, I have had repeated opportunities to include various members of the Reynolds bloodline in my exposés. It must always be borne in mind that a large share of each of these bloodlines are hidden behind other last names. Within this area, my newsletter has exposed Reynolds family members of the Illuminati from Astoria, Oregon, such as Scottish Rite librarian, Mortician Reynolds, and Bend, Oregon, such as Mayor Paul Reynolds, who also runs a mortuary, and his son Mark. One of the first Illuminati monarch slaves in the Portland area to seek her freedom was Mary D. Reynolds. She was from the Mother of Darkness level. She wanted to find treatment for the programming that goes with the Mother of Darkness level, and since wanting her freedom, it is anybody's guess what happened to her. A local occult newspaper, Excalibur, advertises Lamoyne Reynolds. Occult books. Some of the Reynolds family have written occult books. I don't know how all the people mentioned in this section are related, but some or all of these people may relate to the satanic Reynolds bloodline. One of the important ecumenical Christian leaders is Frank E. Reynolds, who is an American Baptist minister, ordained 1955, Program DIR. Student Christian Center, Bangkok, Thailand, Minister for Chicago Ecumenical Ministries, 61-64. Frank E. Reynolds has been trying to introduce Buddhism to America. He and his wife Mani have written a number of books to introduce and teach Buddhism to Americans. Many of the Reynolds have been Episcopalians. Remember, the Episcopalian Church is run by Freemasons and is thoroughly sold out to the occult. One of my monarch survivors vividly recalls a human sacrifice done at the altar of an Episcopalian church. Anyway, getting back to the names of some Reynolds who have written occult books, here is a list of some. Barrio Gordon Robert Reynolds, author of Magic. Divination and Witchcraft Among the Baratsi of Northern Rhodesia, 1963. Charles R. Reynolds with Regina Reynolds, authors of 100 Years of Magic posters, 1977. David K. R. Reynolds, author of Nikon Psychotherapy, Meditation for Self-Development Pub. By Chicago Press. Denise A. R. Reynolds, Sensitive Thoughts for the New Wave Soul. Mani R. Reynolds with her husband, Three Worlds According to King Ruana. A Thai Buddhist Cosmology. Frank E. Reynolds, Guide to Buddhist Religion. Jane Reynolds, Cosmobiology. Lloyd J. K., M.V. Dear Runemeister. A Voyage Through the Alphabet. Overview of financial interests of the Reynolds. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's take a quick overview of the Reynolds' financial interests. Much of the family's money has been well hidden behind fronts, holding companies, etc. The Satanists of the Reynolds family have been involved in high-level drug dealing during this century. They have also had some important and major interests in banking, tobacco, and aluminium. It seems like a fair number have gotten into the mortuary, cremation business, which is a great assistance for cremation after rituals involving human sacrifice. The financial interests of the Reynolds seem to be strongest in the Middle South, and strong in both Virginia and North Carolina. The Reynolds' financial interests are so tightly woven in with the Colemans and Dukes that I will have to deal with all three families together. A few years ago, the financial heads of the three families were as follows: Angier Biddle Duke, Richard S. Reynolds Jr., and Joseph F. Coleman, III. All were members of the Pilgrim Society. It is possible that the family also has some type of secret spiritual hierarchy too. If so, it might follow along the lines of the top 13 families which have kings and princesses, etc. of their bloodlines. Richard S. Reynolds Jr. has been a board chairman of Robert Shaw Controls Company, which has a stranglehold monopoly on manufacturing car thermostats and other car parts. The big three American auto manufacturers all buy from Robert Shaw Controls Company, but then since all three of the American auto manufacturers are Illuminati controlled, they likely don't care that the Reynolds family has such a stranglehold on them. Cadence, which owns theaters and has published occult comic books like the series, Journey into Mystery with the Mighty Thor, is also tied to the Reynolds family. Cadence promotes the occult while making money. What American doesn't know what Reynolds Wrap is? The Reynolds name is a well-known household name, just like DuPont Paints, or the Rockefeller Center, or the Waldorf Astoria are well-known American items named after Illuminati families. The Reynolds family controls several aluminum companies which form a large part of the Illuminati-controlled aluminum cartel. The Mellon family works with the Reynolds in this aluminum cartel, and various Illuminati families also have their hands in the management of the aluminum industry. The tobacco drug connection: the Reynolds family is behind the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. C. Boyden Gray of the Satanic Gray family is heir to the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Co. But don't let that sidetrack you, the Reynolds family still has financial interests and power in the company. If readers remember previous articles on top 13 Illuminati families, specifically, the Astor family article, the Onassis family article and the Lee family article, you will remember some details that will help you understand the secret illegal drug trade that the Reynolds got involved in. The British elite got involved in shipping opium. The elite families got monopolies on the opium trade. The British Empire's military might and political clout was used to force China to allow the opium trade. Before the communists took over China, the British Illuminati families hid their opium trade behind the cover of the British American Tobacco Co. Later, the Red Chinese would hide their opium trading behind the same front tobacco, with their state-run People's Republic of China Tobacco Bureau. In fact, the Red Chinese opium trade was controlled by another Illuminatus, the PR president Li Shanian. Li Shanian is from the occult Yu family, who are proud that they are the leading Oriental satanic family. President Li, a drug lord, was finance minister of Red China from 57-75. He sold so much opium to the West that he was able to help Red China pay off her debts, and he was nicknamed the Money God. R.J. Reynolds was a partner with British American Tobacco Company and was also involved in trading in opium for many years. R.J. Reynolds was also involved with the rigidly controlled tobacco industry. I have reasons to suspect that the family later got involved with running cocaine. Onassis also hid his early drug smuggling behind tobacco importing. The Dukes controlled Liggett and Enlier's Tobacco via their Duke Endowment, a family foundation. The Colemans are known for their Miller Brewing Company. The Coleman fortune was also originally derived via a tobacco company. The Duke family, via underhanded tactics, put together a monopoly of the tobacco industry called the American Tobacco Company. Later they merged and bought out 88 tobacco companies, and the capitalization of the company was $235 million prior to 1911. The Supreme Court made the American Tobacco Company dissolve since it had created an illegal monopoly. However, the Dukes rearranged things and kept on going. The Dukes intermarried with the Biddies, who worked with the Rothschilds. The Dukes also intermarried with the Drexels, who in turn intermarried with the Harrimans and Golds. Nicholas Biddle, 1879–1923, was a trustee of the Illuminatus William Astor of the top 13 Illuminati family of Astors. Some of the Biddies intermarried with the Astor's Illuminati family too. It's a small world at the top. Researcher Ferdinand Lundberg in his book America's 60 Families states on page 36, the Morgan firm and its affiliated commercial banks act, broadly, on behalf of such tremendous accumulations as those of the Vanderbilts, Golds, Drexels, Wideners, Berwins, Phippses, Hills, Dukes, Ryans, McCormicks, Bakers, DuPonts, Fishers, Jameses, and others. Isn't it interesting that my writings have exposed the Morgans, Vanderbilts, Golds, Drexels, Phippses, Dukes, Bakers, DuPonts as families with members in the Illuminati? Connections to Illuminati organizations. Many of the Illuminati organizations which this newsletter has exposed have had members from the Reynolds family. Some examples of this follow: Cosmos Club, Joseph Melvin Reynolds, Lloyd George Reynolds, Council of Foreign Relations, CFR. A. William Reynolds Pilgrim Society, Richard S. Reynolds Jr. 33 Degrees Masons, Harmon Gansbert Reynolds, Marshall S. Reynolds. 32 Degrees Masons, Arthur Rowley Reynolds, Ben Phillips Reynolds, Charles Philip Reynolds, Charles Shaw Reynolds, Irwin James Reynolds, Isaac Reynolds, Harry Edwards Reynolds, Henry James Reynolds, John C. Reynolds, Deputy Grand Sissi of Grand Lodge of Illinois, Knights Templar Masons. These 3 KT names all come from just one lodge in NY, Jerusalem Chapter W2 No. 8. Alex Reynolds, J. Hyatt Reynolds, T. Spalding Reynolds. Knights of Malta, John Charles Reynolds, who worked for the Graces as a communications executive, trustee of the Presby Hospital in San Juan. Foundations and connections. The Dukes and Reynolds used tax-free foundations as a vehicle to escape taxes and hid their wealth while maintaining their financial power. Other Illuminati families also used the foundations as a scheme to remain powerful and to resist paying taxes. The controlled press builds them up as charitable, when most of the grants by these foundations are self-serving for the benefit of the elite. Some of these foundations are the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, Est. 36 in North Carolina, the Kate B. Reynolds Foundation, Est. 46 in North Carolina, the Richard S. Reynolds Foundation, Est. 55 in Virginia, and the Mary Reynolds Babcock Foundation, and the Duke Endowment, address at Rockefeller Plaza, NY. All of these foundations work for the Illuminati. The Donald W. Reynolds Foundation, Est. 54 in Nevada and then moved to Arkansas, might also be connected to the elite, but I don't know. The Kate B. Reynolds Healthcare Trust provides another example of a liaison between the Duke and Reynolds families. John A. McMahon, a Duke University grad, served as both chairman of the Board of Trustees of Duke University and since 1971 as a member of the advisory board to the Kate B. Reynolds Healthcare Trust. Here is an example of a single man working for the interests of both the Dukes and Reynolds. Edwin C. Whitehead, chairman of Technicon Corp., serves as a similar example of a man working for both Duke and Rockefeller interests. Whitehead is a trustee of both Duke University and Rockefeller University. He also has been in charge of several NWO organizations promoting a one world. For instance, he was governor of the UN Association. This article will now show you the reader some of the grants that these foundations make. I ask you, do you see any possibility for any mischief behind these grants? What I noticed about the Reynolds grants is that they control all the crisis centers in the North Carolina area via their money. This means any survivor of SRA calling a hotline is going to get tapped into the Illuminati's net for catching escapees. I also noticed that all the colleges and universities got money, and a variety of different denominations INCL. The Baptists, the Methodists, the non-denominationalists, the Presbyterians, and the Ecumenicalists. What surprised me was that a number of government agencies get money from the Reynolds foundations, especially those dealing with children like social services, and even police departments get money from the Reynolds foundations. I don't want to take more time and space with listing foundation figures. I hope the reader gets the picture of how these foundations are able to control society for the Illuminati. We see government agencies, especially the ones that the Illuminati would want to make sure they controlled or well supported financially. People who live in the Carolinas and Virginia report that the corruption in those states is absolute. These statistics give some facts behind those statements. One organization receiving money above deserves exposure. The Drug Abuse Council, Council on Drug Abuse, has been headed by an Illuminatis and Pilgrim Society member Bethuel M. Webster. R.J. Reynolds Industries. R.J. Reynolds Industries of Winston-Salem, North Carolina had an annual sales of over $6 billion and 37,000 employees. I have the 1976 profit figure for the company was $353 million. I don't know what the current figures are. The public thinks that the shares are widely held by the public, while in reality the control is very narrow. The Reynolds were careful when their stocks went on the market to retain secret control. R.J. Reynolds Industries chairman was Colin Stokes. Colin Stokes is an interesting person who works for the Reynolds. He was a member of 8Onassis International, and a director of several key things, DIR, of Winston-Salem Savings and Loan, Intagon Corp., and NCNB Corporation, which is the bank holding company of North Carolina National Bank. The NCNB, which at one time had assets of $4.647 billion, it may be more now, has been the largest of the Middle South banks and is a key component of the Reynolds, Duke, Quilman clique. From 1958 to 1964, Stokes was a director of the William and Kate B. Reynolds Memorial Park, and further serves the Reynolds as trustee of the Wake Forest Univ. Another interesting liaison person for the Reynolds has been J.P. Sticht, a director of R.J. Reynolds, who has acted as a liaison between the Reynolds, Duke, and Rockefeller dynasties. Sticht is a member of Rockefeller University Council, and a member of the Board of Visitors to Duke University. Leighton Hammond Coleman, who is in the Illuminati from the satanic Coleman family, also sits as emeritus director of R.J. Reynolds Industries. His father and him both belong to the Pilgrim Society, which is a level above the CFR in the Illuminati political section. His father was a director of the corrupt American-Russian Chamber of Commerce, which has been previously exposed in my writings. Now readers can see why R.J. Reynolds Industries has been one of the top companies trading with communist Russia in the past. Another director of R.J. Reynolds Industries is John D. Macomber, a 1950 Yale graduate. I don't know if he belonged to one of the Illuminati's 5 fraternities at Yale or not. Macomber married into the Illuminati Morgan family, and is a member of the Pilgrim Society. Besides being a director for Lee Reynolds, he serves the Rockefellers as a director of Chase Manhattan. He is also DIR, of Norland Corp. Gordon Gray, of the Satanic Gray family, also sits on the Lee Reynolds board. Both Gordon Gray and John Macomber belong to the CFR. Gray also went to Yale, 33 grad, and was with Triangle Broadcasting run by Pilgrim Society member Walter H. Annenberg, who is close to being a billionaire. As you can see, some heavy-duty Illuminati men direct Lee Reynolds Industries. Gray, a member of the CFR, also served as a liaison to the Corcoran financial interests. William W. Corcoran was a corrupt Washington banker who had a lily-white front. Corcoran bribed the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee so that he could illegally profit $500,000 for being the middleman of the transaction of the U.S. paying off its debt to Mexico for lands taken during the Mexican War. See Reports of Committees, 33rd Congress, 1st Session, Volume E, number 354-4. The U.S. did not need a middleman to pay off Mexico, but due to corruption in Congress, Corcoran was able to make a bundle of money with no effort. Riggs Bank is associated with the Corcoran fortune. CFR and Yale grad and Pilgrim Soc. Member William McChesney Martin Jr. has worked for Riggs National Bank as their advisor. The multitude of connections of people serving the Reynolds to the elite are mind-boggling. Many of the institutions in the Middle South connect back to the Illuminati and their front organizations such as the Freemasons and the Chambers of Commerce, the CFR etc. etc. Some of the companies that R.J. Reynolds Industries interlocks with are Arista Company, Avon Products, Charlotte, NC branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, Dun & Bradstreet Companies, Foremost McKesson Inc., Hatteras Income Securities, Hayes Albion Corp., Jefferson Pilot Corp., McLean Industries, Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance, Perkin Elmer Corp., Richardson Merrill Inc., S.C. Johnson & Sons Inc., Southern Broadcasting Inc., Standard Oil Company of Indiana, Standard Savings and Loan, Stauffer Chemical Company, United States Filter Corp., United States Steel Corp., Wachovia Corp. I doubt if this is current information, but needless to say, Lee Reynolds Industries today interlocks with many other corporations. Other Reynolds, Duke companies. The Reynolds Metals Company, notice I wrote Metals Company, interlocks with a large number of companies too. The Reynolds Metals Company has had most of its directors from the Reynolds family. Recently, 4 were on the board of directors and 1 was the company treasurer. One of companies that the Reynolds Metals Company interlocks with is the Bank of Virginia. The Bank of Virginia in turn interlocks with a long list of companies. A large share of these companies have directors that tie back to the elite. Some of these corporations have directors who are members of the Pilgrim Society, others are with other Illuminati organizations. If the entire set of interlocks and their directors were exposed, it might have an emotional impact on the reader, but it gets wearisome to the eyes to be stressed with so many lists, so I will dispense with listing other interlocks. Terry Sanford has worked for the Duke family as a director of the American Arbitration Association, which is an Illuminati front. The Astor family is represented in the AAA by David W. Peck. Terry Stanford has been an FBI agent, is the former governor of North Carolina, and president of Duke University. Stanford is also chairman of the Cordell Hull Foundation for International Education, which had another Duke, Reynolds henchman Dean W. Calvert, as its trustee. Calvert also has been an advisor to the Illuminati-controlled Kellogg Foundation of Battle Creek, MI. Reynolds Securities in New York has been run by William Christian Miller, a member of the Pilgrim Society. William Christian Miller, an Illuminatus, has sat on the board of many corporations. Richard S. Reynolds Jr. of the Illuminati has sat on the board of Central National of Richmond Corp., which is a holding company for the Central National Bank of Richmond. His younger brother David has sat on the board of United Virginia Bankshares Board. Hugh Coleman is a director of United Virginia Bankshares. Hugh's cousin is in the Pilgrim Society. Hugh is also president of Philip Moms Inc., Richmond Corp., and Foreign Policy Association, and the International Chamber of Commerce. Also working with him on the board of United Virginia Bankshares has been Herbert Stein, a director of Reynolds Metals Company. Stein also worked for L.F. Rothschild & Company as a consultant from 1976 onward. Another director working with Stein, David Reynolds, and Hugh Coleman is Kenneth A. Randall, a Mormon. Kenneth A. Randall is a trustee of the Rockefellers Council of the Americas and works with various Illuminati members at other places too. Some of the Reynolds are Mormons. George Reynolds wrote commentary on the Book of Mormon and commentary on the Pearl of Great Price. Eskimo Pie Company is just one of many that the Reynolds have controlled. Julian Lewis Reynolds is on both the board of known Illuminati members are given 3 Mrs. M.N. Reynolds Forsyth Officer of Richard S. Reynolds Foundation A. William Reynolda CFR Billy First Reynolds Scriptwriter for television and radio, Methodist, lives in VA Dana Drummond Reynolds worked with UN Symposium for New Econ. Order in 1979, MMBR World Future Society, advisor for USOM to Libya, extension training advisor to Afghanistan, worked for ABC Network, 47-48, MMBR Planetary Citizens, a New Age Globalist Group, Kappa Tau Alpha, Center, for Study Democracy, went to George Wash University David Parham Reynolds DIR. Reynolds Metal Company, Reynolds Alum. Sales Company, Eskimo Pie Company, Reynolds Jamaica Mines, Limited. Presbyterian living in Richmond, Virginia. Debbie Reynolds' original name Mary Frances Reynolds, movie actress, had the Debbie Reynolds Show. Donald Worthington Reynolds, owner of 6 radio stations, and a newspaper book publisher, lives in Arc J. Berkeley. Reynolds SD of directors Billy Graham Evang. Association in Canada, John W. Reynolds Fed. Judge Joseph Allen Reynolds Jr. Banker, MMBR Several fraternities, Episco. Joseph Melvin Reynolds MMBR Cosmos Club, Physicist, Univ. Official, Grad. Vanderbilt Univ. 48 in Yale, 47 Jolyn Lewis Reynolds, Libby Hallman Reynolds Chief Donor for the Christopher Reynolds Foundation Lloyd George Reynolds Economist, Eco. Professor Yale, 46-47, Guggenheim Fellow 54-55, lives at Yale Univ. MMBR Cosmos Club Norman Eben Reynolds Jr. Lawyer, B. Muskogee, OK and lives in Okia City, belongs to several fraternities. Randolph Nicholas Reynolds, son of William Gray Reynolds, has a son Robert Gray Reynolds, banker, DIR Dominion Nat Bank, VA. Episco. Richard S. Reynolds Jr. Pilgrim Society Russell Seaman Reynolds Jr. Pres. Russell Reynolds ASIC. Yale 54, important figure in Republican Party, on ADVA. BD. For Greater NY's Salvation Army, worked for at least 2 Morgan companies, J.P. Morgan, Morgan Guarantee, likes yachting, Society of Colonial Wars, an elite organization, William Francis Reynolds B. Boston, married to Fitzgerald, Harvard 51, instruct at MIT, William Glasgow Reynolds, lawyer, judge, government employee, married Nancy Bradford DuPont, worked for E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company from 1935 to 71, Mem. Vis. Com. Law School, Vanderbilt Univ. Episcopalian, wrote a history book on the Reynolds.
10. The Rockefeller Bloodline. 4 selected grants in 1984 of the Rockefeller Bro. Fund. 8 selected grants in 1984 of the Rockefeller Family Fund and Rockefeller Foundation. 1. They provide a large share of the money that seminaries in the United States need to operate. 2. They provide a large share of the money that universities need to operate. 3. They provide large grants to various religious organizations. 4. Their influence and control helps determine who will get publicity in the major news magazines. 5. Their influence has contributed to various anti-Christian organizations being set up. 6. They directly help control certain religious groups such as Luce's Trust. One of the 13 satanic bloodlines that rule the world is the Rockefeller bloodline. Today, there are around 190 members of this family with the Rockefeller name and of course some others by other last names. This article is to explore further for those who investigate the Illuminati, how the Rockefeller bloodline is involved in the promotion of the occult and Satanism, and how they are involved in the control of the Christian denominations. This article keys in on just one family, the Rockefellers. To understand the full extent of the Illuminati's control of religion, including Christendom, would require perhaps several books. The Illuminati itself draws its lifeblood from around 500 very powerful families worldwide. This article will not attempt to explain their networks and the many organizations of the Illuminati. It will not even try to do this for the Rockefellers. In fact, no one knows how many trusts and foundations the Rockefellers have. They have hidden trusts within secret trusts within secret trusts. It is estimated that they have between 200 and several thousand trusts and foundations. The finances of the Rockefellers are so well covered that Nelson Rockefeller did not pay 1 cent in income taxes in 1970, yet he was perhaps the richest man in the U.S. The Rockefellers exert enormous influence over religion in this nation in the following ways. 1. They provide a large share of the money that seminaries in the United States need to operate. 2. They provide a large share of the money that universities need to operate. Education influences the religious values of our people. 3. They provide large grants to various religious organizations. 4. Their influence and control helps determine who will get publicity in the major news magazines and on television. 5. Their influence has contributed to various anti-Christian organizations being set up. 6. They directly help control certain religious groups such as Luce's Trust. The Rockefellers' influence is both subtle and not so subtle. In the book The Unholy Alliance details are given on how the seminaries, church boards and Christian colleges have been captured. Much of the money for this came from the Rockefellers. One of the principal large foundations that was instrumental in controlling religious institutions of various kinds was the Sealantic Fund. They have now shifted to other channels. This foundation, which was incorporated in 1938 and was headquartered in New York City, 50 West 50th Street, gave enormous sums of money to manipulate Protestant concerns. In 1964, according to the Russell Sage Foundation's book The Foundation Directory, the Sealantic Fund gave away $681,886 in grants. In 1969, the fund gave $1,889,550 in grants. By 1984, the Sealantic Fund was not being used. But a look at another Rockefeller nonprofit untaxed foundation, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, shows a revealing grant pattern. Many people would not be able to make any sense out of what seems a random pattern of grants without the broad picture of what the Illuminati is doing today. My book Be Wise as Serpents should have clarified how those various groups who receive grants are related and helpful to the Rockefeller agenda. Although these other Rockefeller foundations are not specifically geared toward religion such as the Sealantic Fund was, it is clear these other foundations still impact religion. 4 selected grants in 1984 of the Rockefeller Bro. Fund *. Council on Foundations -$41,000. This money was, according to RB Fund Info, toward work of project which will carry out recommendations from study that points out lack of knowledge about global interdependence and about relationship between international and domestic issues. Emphasis will be placed on information and educational programs to help funders become more familiar with and learn how to analyze opportunities for international grant making. Harlem Interfaith Counseling Service -$100,000. Private agencies collaborating together -$25,000. Encourages collaboration among private development agencies working in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Trilateral Commission -$240,000. 8 selected grants in 1984 of the Rockefeller Family Fund and Rockefeller Foundation ***. ACLU -$15,000, American Historical ASSOC. -$42,000, Amer. Philosophical ASSOC. -$57,500, Catholic University of America -$25,000, Catholic Univ. of Chile -$224,200, Council on Foreign Relations -$165, NAACP -$100,000, Population Council $1,235,000, Univ. of Notre Dame -$25,000. Catholic institutions have been large recipients of grants from foundations connected to the world order. The Catholic Church, the Episcopalian Church, and the Unitarian Universalist Church are all playing big roles in the New World Order for the Satanists. One ex-Satanist has talked about visits that were made with the Pope and Vatican leaders, where the Pope dealt with this person as a member of the Illuminati. In other words, the Pope was not in the Illuminati hierarchy, but he carries out transactions with them, and coordinates his actions according to their instructions. Religious values of our people. In 1952, Congressman Eugene E. Cox headed up a committee that for the first time tried to uncover the Rockefellers' and others' foundations' activities. For some reason, Cox encountered stiff opposition everywhere against his committee's investigation, and the congressman for some reason got sick and died. One member of the committee, Congressman Carroll Reese, and his counsel Renee Wormser attempted to continue the investigation. Rockefeller's henchmen and newspapers did their best to destroy Congressman Reese. The Reese investigation was given only the barest minimum of time and little resources for their investigation. However, they were still able to uncover that beginning in the 1930s vast sums of money were spent in education by the Rockefeller and Carnegie foundations. This money went to promote John Dewey, Marxism, a one-world government agenda, and socialism. The foundations, principally the Rockefeller and Carnegie, stimulated 2/3 of the total endowment funding of all institutions of higher learning in America during the first third of this 20th century. The NEA, National Education Association, was largely financed by the Rockefeller-Carnegie foundations. A 1934 NEA report advised, "A dying laissez-faire must be completely destroyed and all of us, including the owners, must be subjected to a large degree of social control." Reese Committee Counsel Renee Wormser wrote of the investigation, leads one to the conclusion that there was, indeed, something in the nature of an actual conspiracy among certain leading educators in the United States to bring about socialism through the use of our school systems. They discovered that the Rockefeller Foundation was the primary culprit behind the teaching of socialism in America's schools and universities and also behind the NEA's policies. Renee Wormser, counsel for the Reese Committee, reported, "A very powerful complex of foundations and allied organizations has developed over the years to exercise a high degree of control over education. Part of this complex, and ultimately responsible for it, are the Rockefeller and Carnegie groups of foundations." This was the situation in the 1950s when the Reese Committee briefly investigated. The Rockefeller-Carnegie groups have continued basically unopposed for the next 40 years in controlling education. One of the educational book producers is Grolier, Inc. Avery Rockefeller Jr. sits on Grolier, Inc. board meetings. Another interesting board member is Theodore Whaler, who is the director of Grolier, Inc. He was a member of the International Book Committee of UNESCO. The Rockefellers maintain great influence in the United Nations. 3. They provide large grants to various religious organizations. On January 31, 1945, John D. Rockefeller addressed the Protestant Council of the City of NY and told them that the answer to the problems Christianity was that Christianity needed to become the Church of the Living God. Many listening that day may not have realized that he and other top Illuminati consider themselves gods, and that the solution John D. was cryptically giving was for Christianity to serve him a living God. Rockefeller, John D. The Christian Church, what of its future? NY. Protestant Council, 1945, and 1917. 4. Their influence and control helps determine who will get publicity in the major news magazines. The Rockefeller family has enormous controls over various magazines and newspapers. Let us examine how the power of the press can be used in religion. One of the magazines that the Rockefellers have some control over is Time magazine. Time's board chairman, Andrew Heiskell, was associated with David Rockefeller. Another Illuminatus of the sixth level, one Henry J. Fisher, ran McCall's magazine from 1917 to 1956. The establishment's media boosted Anton LaVey's Church of Satan into prominence. The January 31, 1967 New York Daily News ran a story about Anton LaVey performing the first satanic wedding ceremony in America. The March 1970 issue of McCall's ran a nice story about the Church of Satan. Not only is LaVey's Church of Satan a publicity stunt to make Satanism more popular and to deflect criticism of real covert Satanism, the McCall issue makes Anton LaVey's church sound even better in the article than it is. For those brainwashed folks who think that this free advertising for Anton LaVey was just for the sake of finding a good story for the Daily News and McCall, I can show you dozens of better, juicier stories that never have seen the light of day, because they are contrary to what the Illuminati want people to hear. I won't argue that a story on Satanism may be interesting. I am pointing out that many other interesting stories don't get printed. Stories are selected by an editor, they don't just happen. Finally, on June 19, 1972, Time magazine provided more coverage for LaVey with an article, The Occult, A Substitute Faith. Believe me, the sincere devout Christian groups haven't ever received such nice free publicity. I'm not referring to men like 33 Degrees Mason Billy Graham, who works for the New World Order, and Knights Templar Mason Charles T. Russell, founder of the Watchtower Society, who both received great press coverage. Another minor example, and I am pointing out minor examples because they occur many times during the course of year, is Van Daniken's UFO books. Lou Wasserman, head of MCA, which owns G.P. Putnam's Sons, is a member of the Rockefeller University Council. G.P. Putnam's Sons published Van Daniken's anti-Christian UFO religious theories. Cadence Industries own Marvel Comics. The men on the board of Cadence sit under David Rockefeller in places like the CFR. Is it any wonder Marvel Comics promotes the occult and heroes like the Son of Satan? Where does the buck stop? You say that the Rockefellers don't control subordinates. Bear in mind that many of the Rockefellers call themselves Baptists. If they are really Christians, don't you think they could use their influence to stop such terrible things? The point is that the rottenness starts at the top. The rest of the pyramid has a hard time turning out okay when the top of the pyramid is dedicated to Satan. Rockefeller and Hearst worked together in their news monopolies. It was Hearst who promoted both books on Satanism and Billy Graham. If you learn what I know, the two are not contradictory. Hearst made Billy Graham who he is today by financially backing him and publicizing him. Rockefeller was supportive of Billy Graham's New York crusade, and the Manhattan Chase Bank helped Billy Graham out. 5. Their influence has contributed to various anti-Christian organizations being set up. Maurice Strong is a good friend of the Rockefellers. He has been promoting Mother Gaia worship. David Rockefeller works with Maurice Strong and his New Age ideas. Reverend Moon from Korea has been very much loved by the Rockefellers. Moon calls himself Christ and is setting up a religion promoting internationalism. His religion is also a good testing ground for brainwashing recruiting techniques that are being perfected by the NWO. The Rockefellers have been helping Moon, who also has his primary mansion in NY. Also of interest is that the prominent political figures that have endorsed Moon are those with ties to the NWO, and include Ted Kennedy, Mason Mark C. Hatfield, Mason Jesse Helms, and Illuminatus William F. Buckley Jr. CPG 32-33 of the Puppet Master by J. Isamu Yamamoto. A lesser-known group is the Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship, SFF, in Independence, Missouri. Their address was Exec Plaza, 10,715 Winter Road, 64,052. They were founded in 1956. Just like Reverend Moon, they claim to be Christians, but teach and practice other things. They teach and practice the occult. Two prominent men in SFF are Marcus Bach and Gardner Murphy. They both have interesting backgrounds. Marcus Bach shows the touch of the Rockefellers. Marcus Bach, born in 1906, is director of special projects for SFF. The Rockefeller Foundation granted him a fellowship in research and creative writing from 1934 to 36. Gardner Murphy was the consultant in 1950 for UNESCO in New Delhi to the Hindus of the Indian Ministry of Education. From 52-68 he was director of research at the Menninger Foundation, Topeka, Kansas. Yes, Psychology is led mainly by occultists. Menninger himself is a member of several environmental groups for the elite, an honorary trustee of the Aspen Institute, a Freemason, member of ACLU, and a close associate of W. Clement Stone. W. Clement Stone in turn is also a Mason, a member of the Occult American Society for Psychical Research, and the financial backer of the Menninger Foundation. The Federal Council of Churches was financed to a large extent by Rockefeller money. In my Be Wise as Serpents book, I detail how the FCC was designed to destroy Christianity, how they carefully plotted to make the creation of the FCC look like a grassroots movement, when it was actually the creation of the elite, Illuminati. I further detail how the men who ran it were high-ranking Masons, socialists, and one-worlders. Also shown is how they carefully manipulated the real gospel for their own devious ends. 6. They directly help control certain religious groups such as Lucis Trust. David Rockefeller is part of Lucis Trust's management. Lucis Trust puts out the book Externalization of the Hierarchy by Alice Bailey, which spells out the plan for the Satanists and New Agers on how the spiritual hierarchy, actually the demonic hierarchy, is to externalize their rule of the planet. The book gives quite a few of the details of the plan, and is used as a textbook for New Agers at the arcane schools in NY, London, and Europe on how the New Age, one world religion, one world government will be brought in. If anyone doubts the Rockefellers' commitment to Satan, read page 107 of Externalization of the Hierarchy. On page 107, Alice Bailey, president of the Theosophical Society and part of Lucis, formerly Lucifer Trust, tells us who will rule when the New Age, New World Order takes over. On the earthly level, humanity so to speak, the ruler is given on page 107 is Lucifer. On the spiritual level, called Shambhala, the holy city, the coming ruler is given as the Lord of the world, which we Christians know as Satan. Lucis Trust knows it is Satan too, but for public consumption they say that the ruler of the world is Sanat, a scrambling of Satan, Kumara. They also predict there will be a Christ consciousness and the Christ, actually the Antichrist. The book Externalization of the Hierarchy teaches repeatedly, see pages 511 to 512, 514, that the three vehicles to bring in the New Age will be the Masonic lodges. Obviously not everyone attends lodges. Next, the churches. This is clearly revealing to us that men like the Rockefellers are using the churches for the Luciferian plan of Lucis Trust. And finally, education. Well, of course, education. Not everyone attends churches. They need a safety net to catch everyone in their brainwashing to make us all want to be happy slaves under the light bearer. The home life of the Rockefellers is decidedly different than for most people. They have over 100 homes to stay at. The Rockefellers own vast tracts of good land in various countries in South America, and have nice homes in Brazil, Ecuador, and their Monte Sacro Ranch, Venezuela. They have 2 mansions in Washington, D.C., at least, numerous ranches around the United States, resorts in Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and the Caribbean, a 32-room Fifth Avenue duplex in NY, not to mention their place at Seal Harbor, Maine, and the large estate at Pocantico Hills, NY. It is estimated that they have 2,500 house servants. Over the years, they have built up the reputation of being miserly with their help, and to each other. I couldn't begin to know all about the Rockefellers, but I can give a sampling of some of the many items that surround the real lives of America's top Illuminati family. Winthrop, who is homosexual, enjoyed living in Arkansas with his black male friend. He reportedly had the world's largest porn collection. Winifred Rockefeller Emeny, Nelson's cousin, murdered her 2 children and committed suicide. Michael Rockefeller died when he tried to bribe New Guinea tribesmen with large sums of money to go head hunt and make shrunken heads for him. The natives had given up headhunting and Michael couldn't successfully bribe them. Finally, getting tired of Michael, the natives decided to headhunt Michael himself. Many of the Rockefeller family have had troubled lives, filled with all kinds of fears and occult activities. It is known that the Rockefellers have frequently built many hidden tunnels and hidden rooms onto their buildings. They have developed their occult and worldly powers to the point they consider themselves gods. Their powerful often suffer violent ritual death, as most high-level Satanists traditionally go through. One who died in Arizona is known to have been cremated. John D. Rockefeller Sr. Why am I covering the top 13 Illuminati bloodlines? I have often been asked, who are the Illuminati? Who are the people at the top of the conspiracy? Who are the generational satanic families? The Illuminati consists of 13 magical and powerful bloodlines. There are also some other powerful bloodlines that are worth naming, but if they are in the Illuminati, they have blood ties to one of the 13 powerful lineages. About half of the Illuminati people I know have had their parentage hidden from them. Many of those who still know who their real parents are, still do not know what bloodline they belong to until the Illuminati chooses to reveal it to them. Most of the Illuminati have MPD. When high-level Satanists do not have MPD, they very often emotionally break under the stress of the horrible blood rituals that are required. Recently, a non-MPD Satanist in Chicago emotionally broke and gave his life to Christ. I have videos available of an interview of this man exposing Satanism. One of the important lineages has remained secret until 3 investigators named Lincoln, Lee, and Bagent were spoon-fed leads and secrets. They put this into a book called Holy Blood, Holy Grail. I recommend the book and the 2 books which are its sequels, because they show how just one part of the 13 lineages has kept itself secret and has taken immense power of all forms to themselves. In southern Belgium there is a castle. If anyone is traveling there and wants to find the castle, I will show them on the map and describe it. This is the Mothers of Darkness castle. In that castle is a cathedral, and in that cathedral's basement a little baby is sacrificed daily and is coming to power. The pages are written almost round the clock. This castle is also described in my Be Wise as Serpents book. The history in that handwritten book would reveal the real facts behind the propaganda that the world's major news medias give the gullible public. The history as that book reveals it would tell people about how Abraham Lincoln was a descendant of the Rothschilds. Abraham Lincoln was the secret head of the Rosicrucians, a member of their 3-headed top council. I have seen the paper trail proof to these things about Lincoln to my satisfaction that these things about Lincoln are true. Adolf Hitler was also a secret member of the Rothschild lineage. Hitler carried out blood sacrifices to open his mind up to high-level demonic spiritual control. Rockefeller sold Hitler oil during WW2 via Spain to keep WW2 going longer. The history in that book mentions people that the history books, given the public don't, like Michael Augustus Martinelli von Braun-Reinhold, the most powerful Satanist in the world a few years ago. Michael Augustus Martinelli von Braun-Reinhold had 66 satanic brides. And that satanic book in the Mothers of Darkness castle also mentions the Rockefeller bloodline. Only insiders are supposed to know the real history of what has taken place in human history. The real decisions and the real movers and shakers have been hidden from the public's eyes. What the public is given is a stage show where Illuminati puppets parade around and make big speeches according to their script. Each of the 13 families has their own set of Mothers of Darkness. Each of the 13 families has their own secret satanic leadership kings, queens, princesses and princes of darkness. For instance, the Rockefeller family has people who are selected as kings and princes within their own bloodline in secret rituals. The kings and princes, queens and princesses are strictly bloodline. They secretly rule over an area of the world for their own bloodline. This is independent of the Illuminati's hierarchy, which was diagrammed in the January 1993 newsletter. My newsletter from a Christian ministry. In the January 1993 issue, the Covens, Sisters of Light, Mothers of Darkness, and the Grande Mothers were diagrammed. The Illuminati pulls its various bloodlines together under several councils. The Grande Druid Council, or your Council of 13, is your principal council for the Brotherhood of Death. Above the Council of 13 is a higher Council of 9, and an inner group of 3 is believed to head that Council of 9. How do we know about these things? The power of God has reached into the very heart of Satan's empire and pulled out some of the most powerful Satanists and drawn them to Christ. There are several Satanists that were at the top which have managed to find Christ. In addition, some of the next echelon of the hierarchy, such as some of the Mothers of Darkness, are also finding Christ. If someone wants to understand how and why decisions are made in world affairs and by who, then you need to study the Illuminati. The real answers do not rest with the proceedings of the Congress of the United States or with the publicly known leaders of the communist countries. An example of what I am talking, there is a book entitled, Who Financed Hitler, by James Poole and Suzanne Poole. I am always glad to see that some people are willing to look behind the scenes. Believe me, there were people that Hitler listened to. They were the people he went to ritual with, and who put him into power. A continuation of the series of articles on the top 13 Illuminati bloodlines. The Rockefeller Family. Preface. The first article about the House of Rockefeller in this newsletter occurred in the mid-December 1992 volume. Number 13 issue pp. 3-8. The primary focus of that article was to show how the family controlled large segments of the Protestant groups in the United States. A secondary focus of that article was to show the satanic occult side of the family. An attempt will be made in this article not to rehash information given out in that earlier article. The Rockefeller family has been so busy and there is a large amount of information that can be provided about them. Therefore, my goal with this article will be to provide introductory information to the readership, and to qualify that what is written in this article is but the basics of what should be written about the Illuminati activities of this family. Much of my own material on the Rockefeller family was lost this year and I don't have the time to go back and research it again. Much of it involved the secret wheeling and dealing that went on behind the scenes to bring the Rockefellers into wealth and power. Some of the details also involved their manipulations to control about everything that the Rockefellers can find to control. Some of the research was on the occult activities of the House of Rockefeller. The first notorious Rockefeller. The first notorious Rockefeller that researchers who are not working for the Rockefellers refer to as William Avery Rockefeller, 1810 to 1906. William Avery Rockefeller was totally corrupt and lacked any type of morals. He was involved in the occult and practiced magic. He married a number of women around the country in bigamous relationships. He also had a number of mistresses and a large number of sexual partners. He was charged with raping a woman and escaped the state of New York to prevent being sent to jail for it. He stole, lied, and abused his way through life. He wore the best of clothes, and he never lacked for money, including gold coins. Besides loving women, he loved gambling. And where did his money to gamble with come from? He made much of his money dishonestly. His life is a carbon copy of other men who are known by this author to have been in the Illuminati. The reader also needs to bear in mind that the Illuminati carries out a large number of secret occult marriages, which only insiders learn about. One of his wives was Eliza Davidson, 181,349. She was an extremely cruel woman. Historians who have been bought off by the elite like to picture Eliza Davidson as a very pious woman. Although she had a religious front, there are a number of things in her life that show that she was not the paragon of virtue that the paid-for historians have made her out to be. When she married William Avery Rockefeller, she moved in with him and his mistress. The first notably rich Rockefeller. William Avery Rockefeller had many bastard children, and it can be imagined many children born for ritual or for the cult. His wife Eliza had 6 children for him, and of those John Davison Rockefeller is the infamous one who brought the family into limelight. John D. Rockefeller in his lifetime became one of the most powerful men in the world. One of the most best-kept secrets were his secret dealings with the other Illuminati families. The Pacers and other Illuminati families are all intimately involved in the rise to power of the Rockefellers. The other factors involved in John D. Rockefeller's rise to power is his utter ruthlessness. He was willing to do anything for power. John O. Rockefeller established the family in their principal estate at Pocantico Hills in New York. I have lost the exact figure, but over 100 Rockefeller families live at the private land of Pocantico Hills. A brief survey of the Rockefellers' influence. The Rockefellers have divested much of their holdings into places which they control, but nominally they are not owners of. The Rockefellers' financial power is far greater than the balance sheets would indicate. The Rockefellers can give donations from an organization which they control to another that they control, and not lose any control over the money. The donations look impressive, but the Rockefeller bloodline hasn't lost. Have you ever noticed that Rockefeller's Standard Oil uses the satanic pentagram in a circle as their logo? Just 3 of countless Rockefeller companies are Texas Instruments and General Electric, and Eastman Kodak. The Rockefellers also control Boeing. This author, Fritz Springmeier, has repeatedly been given information from numerous sources about the occult activities that are being perpetrated at the Boeing plants in the Seattle area. Monarch programming has even taken place at a Boeing plant. All these things fit together when one gets the bigger picture and the inside scoop. The Rockefellers also control Delta. Has anyone realized that the Delta symbol is a very widely used satanic symbol? Is it any wonder so many Illuminati and CIA, and world financiers, and people like Chuck Colson, see the exposés on Chuck Colson in 93's newsletters, use Delta to fly on? My notes are lost, but suffice it to say the Rockefellers own land all over South America. The Rockefellers own land most anywhere anyone would want to visit in the U.S. From Hawaii to Texas to Florida and Seal Harbor, Maine. Notice how often Bush would go to Maine when he was president. The Rockefellers have played a role in Luce's Trust in the United Nations. Interestingly, you will notice that Prince Charles is the spokesperson for Luce's Trust and also works with the United Nations in various ways. Prince Charles is from another satanic bloodline. Readers need to study My Be Wise's Serpent's book to see how Luce's Trust fits into things. The Rockefellers were involved in the creation of the FBI, so that the FBI has always been an arm of power for the Illuminati. That is why there are official FBI programs in action today to kidnap children and provide them for sacrifice. Yes, American people, the wolf was set in charge of guarding the chicken coop. The organization that is working as part of the FBI is the Finders. The stink was so bad that U.S. News and World Report did a story to soften the impact of the scandal. See the article on a following page. Ex-Satanists who worked with the FBI to receive the children the FBI kidnapped and sold to them for sacrifice have been trying to get the word out publicly about the FBI's corruption. When the Illuminati was beginning to get exposed in the Franklin saving and loan case in Lincoln, Nebraska, the FBI was part of the dirty actors and was part of the cover-up. The Rockefellers have had control over the FBI since they helped get it started. When Congress wanted to investigate the CIA for wrongdoing, they appointed a commission headed by Rockefeller to investigate the CIA's wrongdoings. Yes, the Rockefeller Commission did a big study and slapped the hands of the CIA for a few misdeeds. Their report is still cited as the big investigation of the CIA. Some investigation, since the Rockefeller family work hand in hand with the CIA to create monarch slaves. Of course that part of the CIA's misdeeds got overlooked. A recent convert from Satanism, Michael MacArthur, has given validated inside information about the FBI and the CIA programs which kidnap children in order to supply satanic rituals with sacrificial material. The names of the agents who spend their official government time kidnapping children for Satanism that Michael knows about are as follows: Chucky, Mike, Peters, FBI hitman in DIV, 5 of FBI, involved with INS law case Nicole Hara, FBI agent who abducts children for sacrifice Unda Krieg Satanist working for FBI Ken Lanning FBI agent who abducts children for sacrifice Nick O'Hara FBI hitman, Satanist, has covered FBI child kidnappings by murder Cape Richardson CIA agent who abducts children for sacrifice rather than risk election, a brilliant coup d'etat which is exposed in Be Wise as Serpents. Was carried out to put Nelson A. Rockefeller into the vice presidency. The Rockefellers control both education and religion in this country by their foundations. The Rockefellers have played key roles in the CFR. Rockefeller wrote the book The Future of Federalism, which supports the union of nations into a world government. For many years the Rockefellers have been pouring billions of dollars into projects and international groups which are working to bring in a public one world government. The world already has a secret one world government. The Rockefellers take part in decisions that affect Russia, China and other parts of Asia, and with good reason. The House of Rockefeller has hold up and assets in these countries too. The investigator of the Rockefellers will find that they have secretly had their hand in the politics of the United States during the 20th century. The decisions and directions this nation has taken are the result of countless orders which the Rockefellers have given to their underlings. Two neighbors horse farmers came together one day to talk business. The first farmer sold his horse to the second for $250,000, and then bought it back for about $20 more. He could now advertise his horse, actually worth $20, as a horse he had paid over $250,000 for. We can laugh over such schemes. And perhaps we should laugh at ourselves for having been fooled, for if there is one area in life that exceeds the religious in deception, and touches all of us, it is the financial. What else can we do about it except laugh? The famous poet Lord Byron describes the archetype of our two farmers in 1823, who keeps the world, both old and new, in pain or pleasure. Who makes politics run glibber all? The shade of Bonaparte's noble daring? Jew Rothschild and his fellow Christian, Baring. You'll learn about some other. Visiting the nation the Rothschilds built. In 1974, in the summer after the Yom Kippur War, this author toured Israel, and got the chance to personally visit many of the buildings like the Knesset that the Rothschilds' money has built. The Knesset is the Israeli equivalent to our Congress's Capitol building. One of the Rothschilds in his will left money for ongoing building projects in Israel, and the Rothschilds are honored with a street named after them in Jerusalem. The people of Germany and Turkey have been very close. I can recall meeting Turkish Gastarbeiter guest workers in Germany. The reader will remember that Turkey fought on Germany's side in WWI. A few powerful Jews, including the Rothschilds, were responsible for the wording of the treaty imposed on Germany that ended WWI. 3. The treaty gave the Rothschilds the German-owned railway rights in Palestine, which had been part of the Turkish Ottoman Empire, thus paving the way for the Rothschilds to have a sure leverage to dictate policy concerning Palestine. The Rothschilds had made loans to Turkey which amounted to almost £100 million. When the Turkish government collapsed after WWI because they were on the losing side, the Rothschilds had a claim on Palestine because of those unpaid Turkish loans. 4. The British government followed the dictates of the Rothschilds. The British were given a mandate over Palestine, and the Rothschilds were able to, through their proxies in the British government, to create the steps that led to the nation of Israel. 5. The Rothschilds as prophets. One item stands out as a person listens to the international bankers and reads their books. They believe money is what makes the world go round. If you have money, you can do anything. Money is God, and it is worshipped and served. Even after these families accumulate more than can be spent, these devotees continue selling their souls for this false but powerful God. The great poet-philosopher Heinrich Heine, a banker's son, said, "Money is the god of our time, and Rothschild is his prophet." 6. Following the cue of the Rothschilds, Heinrich Heine, a Jew, signed his name by drawing a seal of Solomon. 7. Amsel Rothschild is reported to have said, "Give me control of the economics of a country, and I care not who makes her laws." 8. Today his descendants meet twice daily in London to dictate to the world what the world price of gold will be. They also dictate what the Federal Reserve System will do with America's finances. Another god too. According to eyewitnesses, who were prominent enough to visit one of the British Rothschild homes, the Rothschilds worshipped yet another god too, Satan. They set a place for him at their table. 8a. The Rothschilds have been Satanists for many generations. The Rothschilds are an important part of the history of the Seal of Solomon, also known as hexagram, Magen David, six-pointed star, Star of David. The Seal of Solomon, the hexagram, was not considered a Jewish symbol before the Rothschilds began using it. 9. Throughout the Middle Ages, the Seal of Solomon had been used by Arab magicians, Kabbalist magicians, Druid witches and Satanists. One of the few ancient uses of the symbol was on the floor of a 1,200-year-old Muslim mosque found where Tel Aviv is today. 10. In the 12th century, an Ashkenazic Jew, Menahem ben Duji, who thought he was the Messiah, used the magical symbol. 11. Because the Rothschilds were Satanists, they adopted this powerful magic symbol in 1822 for their coat of arms. The name they adopted for their family actually comes from the fact that in the 17th century Mayor Amschel Bauer began hanging out a red hexagram in front of their house to identify it. Mayor Amschel then decided to take the name Red Shield, Rothschild in German, after the red seal of Solomon that they used. Alice Bailey, in a treatise on white magic, page 412, claims that the hierarchy has a special group which she calls the financial group, controlling all that can be converted into energy, and constituting a dictatorship over all modes of intercourse, commerce and exchange. According to Luciferian Alice Bailey, the financial group is the latest group directed by the hierarchy. In 1836, Zevi Hirsch Kalischer approached Rothschild and proposed Rothschild by all of Erez Israel. It took many years for the Rothschilds to finally create Israel. The Rothschilds have been a primary force behind the creation of Israel, and so it is appropriate that the nation carries their magical seal of Solomon as the state logo. The ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel will not serve in the Israeli army because they know that Almighty God was not behind the creation of modern Israel, but rather the rich ungodly apostate Jews. They refuse to serve the ungodly. They are more wiser than men like Jerry Falwell who run around proclaiming Israel as God's nation. Men like Falwell are the type that this author finds reference to repeatedly in Jewish documents that speak of their power within the fundamentalists. God is ultimately in charge. He has allowed Hitler to come to power, Stalin to come to power, and the Rothschilds to come to power. In the same sense that God rules over and blessed Stalin's Russia, he rules over America and Israel. To twist scriptures about God seating the rulers and then to apply them to bless one satanic secular communist nation and not another is inconsistent and not correctly using the word of truth. Some people object that the conspiracy of power is labeled Jewish rather than satanic by certain concerned citizens. This objection is valid, however. Will these objectors then take the obvious next step and admit the nation of Israel which the Rothschilds created as satanic and not Jewish? But then who knows precisely why people do what they do? If you ask someone why he does something, he will give you one answer today, another tomorrow, and another the next day. Does he do what he does for a real reason, or a single motive? Perhaps to label the power as only satanic or only Jewish or only Masonic is to neglect the personal human dimension. This personal human dimension is godless. Being godless, it fills that void, by pretending its men are gods. This brings us right back to the Gnostic religions and Satan. Most Jewish people do not concern themselves with learning the occultic significance to their treasured Magen David, Star of David. King David did not have anything to do with the hexagram, although his son Solomon did when he began worshipping Ashtoreth, Star, also known as Astarte, Chiun, Chiron, Remphan, and Saturn. 12 Solomon built altars to Star, Astarte, aka Ashtoreth. The god Saturn is associated with the star, but both Saturn and Astarte also been identified with a number of other names. Saturn is an important key to understanding the long heritage this conspiracy has back to antiquity. The city of Rome was originally known as Saturnia or City of Saturn. The Roman Catholic Church retains much of the Saturn worship in its ritual. Saturn also relates to Lucifer. 13 In various occult dictionaries, Saturn is associated with evil. Saturn was important to the religion of Mithra, and also the Druids. Co. Masters of the World. Connections to JWs, Mormons, and Judaism. It has been said all roads lead to Rome. For this book, it could be said all paths of investigation lead to the Rothschilds. Charles T. Russell, in an 1891 letter to Baron, Lord, Rothschild, mailed from Palestine, outlined possible courses of action that could be taken to establish the Jews in Palestine. Russell's letters praised the Rothschilds' money which established Jewish colonies in Palestine. Russell writes, Rothschild, what is needed here, therefore, next to water and cleanliness, is a good government which will protect the poor from the ravenous and the wealthy. Banking institutions on sound bases, and doing business honorably, are also greatly needed. Russell continues, may the God of Jacob direct you, my dear sir, and all interested with you in the deliverance and prosperity of Israel, and blessed will they be who, to any extent, yield themselves as his servants in fulfilling his will as predicted. 14. When the Mormon Church needed financing in the late 19th century, they went to Kuhn, Loeb Company 15 to explain the Rothschilds' control of Kuhn, Loeb Co. Here is some background information. The method that the House of Rothschild used to gain influence was the same that royalty had used for centuries, marriage. The Rothschild children, girls and boys, have had their spouses chosen on the basis of alliances that would benefit the House of Rothschild, but since consolidating world power they generally have married cousins these last 2 centuries. 16 Jacob Schiff grew up in the house that the Rothschilds had at 148 Judengasse, Frankfurt. Jacob Schiff came to the United States with Rothschild capital and took over control of a small Jewish banking concern founded by 2 Cincinnati dry goods merchants, Abraham Kuhn and Solomon Loeb. He even married Solomon's daughter. In 1885, Loeb retired, and Schiff ran the Kuhn, Loeb Company for the Rothschilds until 1920 when he died. 17 During Russell's and Brigham Young's day, Lord Rothschild was considered the lay leader of world Jewry. 18 Edmund Rothschild was president of the Jewish colonization ASIC, 19 which was a major Zionist group. Amsem Rothschild indicated that his grandfather Amschel Mayer Rothschild had insisted in clause 15 of his will to his children, may they and their descendants remain constantly true to their ancestral Jewish faith. 20. However, the will has been secret and there is no way of knowing what it says. The Rothschilds have not remained true to the Orthodox faith. If this was actually what clause 15 said, then something is amiss. The Jewish world has showered the Rothschilds with praises. The Rothschilds govern a Christian world. Not a cabinet moves without their advice. They stretch their hand, with equal ease, from Petersburg to Vienna, from Vienna to Paris, from Paris to London, from London to Washington. Baron Rothschild, the head of the house, is the true king of Judah, the prince of the captivity, the Messiah so long looked for by this extraordinary people. The lion of the tribe of Judah, Baron Rothschild, possesses more real force than David, more wisdom than Solomon. 21. The Prieur de Sion, the elders of Sion 22 also relates to the Rothschilds who are reported to serve on a Jewish council of elders of Sion. 23 The Rothschilds have helped the Jewish people the Rothschilds' own way. for those who admire stinginess, the Rothschilds will be greatly looked up to. For instance, the extent of James Rothschild's charity in France to poor Jews was 5 francs, the equivalent of $1. Their dynasty has destroyed honest Jews along with Christians. Today, few dare criticize the Rothschilds. CEO masters of the world. Connections to secret societies. The Rothschilds had played a major role in the Bavarian Illuminati, 25, and it is known that at least one of the sons of Amsel was a member. As the reader remembers, Amsel placed his sons in the major European capitals, where they each set up the principal banking houses. By their own secret intelligence service and their own news network, they could outmaneuver any European government. 26. The large amounts of voluminous correspondence by Rothschild couriers attracted attention. 27. But no one ever stopped their personal intelligence and mail services. After the Bavarian Illuminati were exposed, the central occult power over the European secret societies shifted to Carbonarism, aka the Alta Vendita. 28. Led by another powerful Rothschild, Karl Rothschild, 29, son of Amschel. In 1818, Karl participated in a secret document that was sent out to the headquarters of Masonry from the Alta Vendita. The Masons were quite distressed when a copy of this was lost, and offered rewards to anyone who could return the lost copy. It was originally written in Italian. Its title translates, Permanent Instructions, or Practical Code of Rules. Guide for the Heads of the Highest Grades of Masonry. 30. The Masonic Reference Book 10,000 Famous Freemasons, Volume 4, p.74, indicates 2 other sons of Amschel were Masons, James Meyer Rothschild, and his brother Nathan Meyer Rothschild. James Rothschild in Paris was a 33-degree Scottish Rite Mason, and his brother Nathan in London was a member of the Lodge of Emulation. And Jewish Freemason Katz indicates Solomon Mayer Rothschild, a third member of the 5 brothers, was initiated into Freemasonry on June 14, 1809. 31. The Rothschilds became powerful within Freemasonry. We find the Saint Simonians, the occult religious millennialist forerunners of communism, praising Baron de Rothschild in their magazine Le Globe. There is no one today who better represents the triumph of equality and work in the 19th century than M. le Baron de Rothschild. Was this Jew born a millionaire? No, he was born poor, and if only you knew what genius, patience, and hard work were required to construct that European edifice called the House of Rothschild, you would admire rather than insult it. Lionel de Rothschild, the de was added by the French Rothschilds, was involved with the first communist Internationale. The Mason Mazzini who helped start communism praised Rothschild. Rothschild could be king of France if he so desired. 32. Adolphe Crémieux was a French Jewish Mason, see chap. 1.4 for his credentials. The Rothschilds gave at least £1,000 to Crémieux to go to Damascus with Solomon Monk and Sir Moses Montefiore to win the release of Jews imprisoned there, and to convince the Turkish Sultan to declare the charges of ritual murder false. 33 According to the 3 Jewish authors of Dope, Inc. the B'nai B'rith was a spin-off of the Order of Zion and was organized as a covert intelligence front for the House of Rothschild. It is highly probable that the B'nai B'rith was used as a Rothschild intelligence cover. The Rothschilds are prominent in the Bilderbergers too. The Rothschilds were closely related to the Council of Foreign Relations, CFR. Although many people today would not view the CFR as a secret society, it was originally set up as part of a secret society and it was kept secret for many years, in spite of its awesome power. Carroll Quigley, professor of international relations at the Jesuit Georgetown University, exposed the Round Table Group with his book Tragedy and Hope. 34. The Rothschilds supported Rhodes to form De Beers. 35. Later, Rhodes made 7 wills which established a secret society modeled after the Jesuits and Masons to help bring in a one-world government centered upon Britain, and the Rhodes Scholarships. 36 The inner group was established in March 1891 and consisted of Rhodes, Stead, Lord Esher, Brett, and 33 Mason Alfred Milner. 33 BB, a secondary circle of potential members of the Circle of Initiates, consisted of the Jew Lord Balfour, Sir Harry Johnson, Lord Rothschild, Lord Grey and others. Initially, Lord Rothschild was part of the inner group of Rhodes' secret society, but was replaced by his son-in-law Lord Rosebery, who wasn't as conspicuous. 37 The Fabian Socialists dominated the staff at Oxford when the Rhodes Scholars began arriving. These scholars then received indoctrination and preparation to become part of an international socialist New World Order. 38 The Round Table Group developed from the inner executive circle of Rhodes' secret society. The outer circle was established after the start of the 20th century. The Round Table Group was extended after WWI by organizing a front organization, the Royal Institute of International Affairs. The Council of Foreign Relations was the American part of this front. The Inner Circle continues to direct the Outer Circle and its two front organizations RIIA and CFR. The CER in turn set up a number of fronts, including the Institute of Pacific Relations, IPR. CO Masters of the World, management of the Catholic and Tsar's wealth and the capture of the Orthodox Church's wealth. Early in the 19th century, the Pope came to the Rothschilds to borrow money. The Rothschilds were very friendly with the Pope, causing one journalist to sarcastically say, "Rothschild has kissed the hand of the Pope. Order has at last been re-established." 39 The Rothschilds in fact over time were entrusted with the bulk of the Vatican's wealth. The Jewish NC. Volume 2, p.497 states, it is a somewhat curious sequel to the attempt to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschilds that at the present time, 1905, the latter are the guardians of the papal treasure. Researcher Eustace Mullins writes that the Rothschilds took over all the financial operations of the worldwide Catholic Church in 1823. 40. Today the large banking and financial business of the Catholic Church is an extensive system interlocked with the Rothschilds and the rest of the international banking system. The great wealth of the Russian Tsars was entrusted to the Rothschilds, $35 million with the Rothschilds Bank of England, and $80 million in the Rothschilds Paris Bank. The Rothschilds financed the Russian Revolution, which confiscated vast portions of the Orthodox Church's wealth. They have been able to prevent, due to their power, the legitimate heirs of the Tsar's fortune to withdraw a penny of the millions deposited in a variety of their banks. The Mountbattens, who were related to the Rothschilds, led the court battles to prevent the claimants from withdrawing any of the fortune. In other words, the money they invested in the Russian Revolution was not only paid back directly by the Bolshevists in millions of dollars of gold, but by grabbing the huge deposits of the Tsar's wealth, the Rothschilds gained what is now worth over $50 billions. 41. CO Masters of the World. Control over Satanism and Witchcraft. Chapter 2.11 gives the names of a witchcraft council of 13 which is under Rothschild control and in turn issue orders to various groups. One of the purest form of Satanism can be traced to the Jewish Sabbatin sect and its Frankist spin-off. The leaders of this up to the Rothschilds were Sabbatai Zevi, 1626–1676, Nathan of Gaza, 16. Jacob Frank, 1726–1791, Rothschilds. Three connections between Satanism, evil, and money. Money naturally attracts itself to evil. For instance, if a woman prostitutes herself, she may receive a great sum of money, but who will pay her for keeping her virginity or her dignity? If you are a hit man, a large amount of money is yours if you kill your target. Who will pay you if you would miss your target? Second, evil men believe in where there is a will there is a way, and they are willing to sell their souls for their god money. They will employ evil to gain money. While most people are quite aware of these last two connections, a third may likely have escaped their attention. Thirdly, the principal group of men who cranked up international banking were Satanists from the beginning. These Satanists now are the ones who run the Federal Reserve and are responsible for the creation of U.S. Federal Reserve notes. Just having total control over the supply of U.S. paper money almost gives them leverage over the world's finances, without mentioning they control the World Bank. It is no accident then, that once they established world financial control, they would do all in their power to divide and conquer and destroy both the Christian and the Muslim faith in God. These powerful bankers relate to faith in God as Cain related to his brother Abel. That they may be related to the Jewish people does not mean they have the Jewish people's best interest at heart. Initially, Sabbatai Zevi was rejected by many Jews. His sect gained momentum in second half of the 17th century in southeastern Poland. 42, in 1759–60, 500 Jewish Sabbatians converted to Christianity. 43 in 1715. 109 of the 415 Jewish families in Frankfurt were engaged in moneylending. The rest were merchants of various kinds. The concepts that Satanism holds to were a natural shoe-in to justify for many of these Jewish bankers the type of behavior they were engaged in. 44. Long story short. Many divisions and battles between religious elements in the world have been encouraged and supported by the power's wealth. Unfortunately, many have been fooled into thinking that being devout and faithful to God is the source of religious fighting. In some areas of the world, Muslims, Christians, and others have gotten along fine for centuries. Religious tensions do spring to some degree from within the religions themselves, but the fuel to keep those fires burning and to light up conflicts often come from the power's wealth. An obvious example is the Iran-Iraq War. CO Masters of the World. Control over WWI Treaty. When Germany fell, not only did Rothschild agents draft the treaty, prepare the idea of the League of Nations, but Max Rothschild was one of 11 men who took control over Bavaria. Max Rothschild was a Freemason in Lodge No. 11, Munich, Germany. CO Masters of the World. Connections to MI5, Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, CFR, et al. Victor Rothschild, who worked for J.P. Morgan and Company, and was an important part of MI5, British intelligence. Victor Rothschild was also a communist and member of the Apostles' Club at Cambridge. 45 Lord Rothschild was one of the original members of Rhodes' Round Table Group, which developed into the CFR. It was the Rothschilds who had financed Cecil Rhodes, beginning in Africa. The Rothschilds have several agents which their money got started and who still serve them well, the Morgans and the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers were Marrano Jews. The original Rockefeller made his money selling narcotics, they weren't illegal then. After acquiring a little capital he branched out in oil. But it was the Rothschild capital that made the Rockefellers so powerful. They also financed the activities of Edward Harriman, railroads, and Andrew Carnegie Steel. 46. CO Masters of the World. Power within Christendom. The Rothschilds also wielded much influence and power not only in secret societies, but also in Christendom's churches. The Salvation Army under the suggestion of the Rothschilds adopted the Red Shield, Roth Red Shield, for their logo. One history of the Rothschilds remarks, the Rothschilds had rapidly propelled themselves into a position of immense financial power and political influence. They were an independent force in the life of Europe, accountable to no one and, to a large extent, reliant on no one. Popular lampoons depicted them as the real rulers of Christendom. 47. Some of the Rothschilds have been involved in the campaign to loosen public morals. The first executive secretary of the National Student Forum was John Rothschild. This National Student Forum changed its name like articles of clothing. Speaking about clothing, one of the aims of this socialist group was to promote public nudity and free love. This organization had the following constituent groups: Radcliffe Liberal Club, Union Theological Seminary Contemporary Club, Yale Liberal Club, 48, to name just a few. A further development of this was the Youth Peace Federation, which consisted of the League of Youth of Community Church, Methodist Epworth League, NY District, Young Judea, and Young People's Fellowship of St. Philip's Parish, 49, to name a few. American religious men have ties to the Rothschilds, especially through their various agents. Harry Emerson Fosdick, who was pastor of Rockefeller's church, was also among the presidents of the Rockefeller Foundation. John Foster Dulles, CFR, was chairman of the board of the Rockefeller Foundation, and married a Rockefeller, Janet Pomeroy Avery. Remember, John Foster Dulles was an important Federal Council of Churches of Christ official. See Chap. 2.9. Every road leads back to the Rothschilds. There are more items than what have been mentioned above linking the Rothschilds to the various tentacles. Each of the various tentacles that conspiracy theorists have put forth, the Jews, the Masons, the intelligence communities, the international bankers, the Prieur de Sion, the Catholics, the Trilateral Commission, the CFR, the New Age, the cults, each ties back to the Rothschilds' power.